Hello everyone, I'm Dave Thomas, and this time I am building the feathered flyer from Apogee Components. And this is essentially their version of Estes Mosquito. It's a featherweight recovery kit that operates on 13mm motors. And as we can see on the package here, if you use full AAE motors here, A3s and A10s, you're going to lose this out of sight. Okay, so I would recommend staying with the quarter-A's there, and you might have a chance to find it again. Alright, we'll go ahead and take a look in here and make sure we get everything. So there's our placard. Alright, we've got some laser cut fins, and there are 4 of them. That makes it different from the Mosquito, which only has 3. Alright, we've got a nose cone and its base. Alright, these are water transfer decals. Okay, and if we come over here to our parts list, let's see, somewhere in here there should be a launch lug. Let's make sure we haven't lost that. Maybe in the instructions. Oh, there it is. Got left in the bag. Okay, so we've got the water slide decals, we have the shoulder and the nose cone, alright, the fins, launch lug. So this is going to go together fairly quickly. In fact, probably the longest duration that we're going to have to do here is simply waiting for the paint to dry. The first thing we're going to do is put the nose cone together. And what they're doing here is we're going to go ahead and glue the base on, and then we're going to cut off this eyelet. Okay, and that way this won't stick down, and that gives enough clearance inside for the motor to rest up against this base piece. Alright, so this you can use a little bit of super glue, you can use some plastic cement. I'm going to use a little bit of this brush-on plastic cement. Now, especially with the plastic cement, be careful that you don't get so much on that it melts the nose cone. Alright, just a nice even layer in there, and we're going to stick that in, twist it a couple of times there, and then that will adhere to itself here momentarily. And then here we can take our hobby knife and cut through this. They're showing using pliers to break it off. Don't think we'll have to go that far. Nope, it's going to come right off for us. Okay. Alright, now they're using super glue around here. Gel type super glue would be good. This is actually a little bit loose in here. And so the regular kind of runny type of super glue probably is not going to hold very well. I do not currently have any gel type super glue in the lab here with me, strangely enough. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and use a little tube type cement here. Alright, so this is a high viscosity cement. Now we don't want great big amounts of this either. Alright, but I'm going to put a nice even bead just inside, and hopefully this will melt enough of the plastic to allow it to adhere to the cardboard. As I said, it's not ideal for it. I prefer thick cyanoacrylate for doing different types of materials like plastic to cardboard. Alright, but I'm going to go ahead and let this cure before I go on and do anything else with it, because I don't want it popping off and the fit is not perfect. Let's set that aside to dry. Whoops, and drop it. Alright, so we'll let that dry. In the meantime, we'll take a look at the fins here. While I'm waiting for the glue to dry on the nose, we'll go ahead and cut out the fins here. These are mostly laser cut. They just have a few little tiny nubs in there. You can just take a hobby knife and cut through the little nubs. Actually, if you want to, in fact I probably should do this, is you can take a sanding board or sanding block or a sanding tee, whatever you like to sand with. Alright. And I'm going to use some 150 grit sandpaper here. I'm going to sand the whole thing. Now sometimes these have already popped out during shipping, and if that's the case, you can do them one by one. This just makes it a little more efficient. Okay, a little bit of dust there. Alright, now I'll finish removing these. Now you may want to round the fins here or even airfoil them. I am not going to. I am going to sand this surface and get rid of all the nubbins there and some of that charring. But this rocket goes really high as it is, and I don't need to try and make it go even higher. So instead, I'm just going to take my sanding block here, and I can probably do this with all four of them at once. So we'll just stack all of them up. Like this. Alright, I'll put my sandpaper down on my surface, and now I'm just going to run these around. Okay, the trick is doing them all evenly. Alright, now this is the root edge. We want that nice and straight and flat so that it glues on well. Now these are still kind of rough on the sides, and so it's kind of up to you just how far you want to take these. You could use sanding sealer on them to help fill in the grain and then go from there. I think I'm going to give these just a little more sanding with the 150 grit here on the faces. And you always want to sand in parallel to the grain here. So those are a little smoother now. You can continue with some 220 grit, maybe even 320 grit sandpaper if you want to get these really smooth. What I will do is when I go to paint this, I'll be using a filling sandable primer, and it's really good at filling in wood grains. What it also does is it locks these fibers that are kind of sticking out at random. And after that's been primed, it's really easy just to quickly sand those off without getting more fibers sticking up. Okay, so right now I'm going to set those aside until the body tube and nose cone glue has dried. The glue on the nose cone is dry, and so we are now ready to put the fins on. Okay, so for this I'm going to take some wood glue here. You can also use white glue if you don't have wood glue. And here I just want a thin bead of glue. This is not a case where more is better. We just want a little bit here. Just enough to cover that. And now I'm going to stick this to the rocket, and the rocket is pre-marked, so just look for the little etchings there. Alright, and then I'm going to pull it back off, and now I'm going to allow this to dry for about 30 to 60 seconds so that it gets more tacky. Okay, a little more than 30 seconds has passed. So now I'm going to reapply the fin. And now since the glue is tackier, this is going to hold itself up much easier. And I'll look down here and make sure we're straight and perpendicular. Alright, and then I would advise drying this for about 15 seconds before doing the next fin. Now if you've got a fin alignment guide, you can speed that up a bit. Alright, this one is made by Apogee, and they make these for all the common body tube sizes in either 3 or 4 fin combinations. And so with this, I can just slide this over my fin there, and that will keep it from moving out of perpendicularity to the tube. Okay, I'll do the other 3 fins off camera, and then I'll come back when those have dried. The glue on the fins is dry, and normally I would put the launch lug on next, but because there's so little space in here, I'm going to do the fin fillets first, and then hopefully I won't need to put a fillet on the launch lug, but we'll see how that goes when we get to that point. You can do these all at once as long as you put the rocket in a horizontal position when you're done. And because these are so small, I'm not going to make really thick fillets here. So we just want to run a bead of glue there. Alright, and I like to do 2 facing fins at the same time. Get a little paper towel ready here. So now I'm just going to smooth these in with a finger. Alright, and then I just go on to the next ones and so on until we finish all the fillets. At this point I can go ahead and put the launch lug on, and I'm going to intentionally use a little bit more glue than I normally would, as putting a fillet in there may be a bit tricky. Alright, so on the dotted line there, now this, you get a very tight space in which to align this. Now I'm a little off center, but it's straight. I'm tempted to leave it just like that. Let's see. Gonna roll that in. And the glue is actually merging with the fin fillet, so I think that's going to be good. Just clean a little bit off there. Alright, I'm going to store this in a horizontal position while all of this glue dries so we don't get the glue running to one end or the other. And then once the glue is thoroughly dried, we can prep the fins for painting. The fillets on my rocket are set, and it looks like they're all dry. Actually, a little bit can go there. I think we're okay. Next, we're going to paint this. And so I make up these little painting sticks here that I use dead motors on. It just gives me something to hold on to this so I don't have to paint my fingers. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to give this probably 2 or 3 coats of the filling sandable primer that I talked about earlier, as it's good for filling in the wood grains. We'll give that some sanding, and if we look at the picture for this one, alright, they've done, that looks like a really nice airbrush job. I do have an airbrush, but I haven't learned how to use it yet. But I can affect something similar with spray paint if I'm really lucky and everything goes as planned. But first we need to prime this. Here's my rocket after 2 coats of primer, and you'll notice you can really see the grain here, but you can also really see the little fibers sticking up. And that's what I really wanted this to do, is that way once the primer dries I can sand those, and those little fibers won't come back. They'll be locked into the primer there. So this needs to dry for at least 2 hours before I can sand it, and then we'll go on to the rest of the paint. I let the primer dry overnight with this. Now, with this type of primer, you don't have to go that long. You can sand it after about 4 hours. But this has all been sanded with 220 grit sandpaper. And you can see now that all those fibers, especially along the edges, those are all gone. And we still see a little bit of wood grain here. That's okay. This is going to have several coats of paint on it. And so I think that will fill in most of the remaining grain there. So back to the spray paint and the fume hood, and we'll be back when this one's been painted. So here's my painted rocket, and I've given it kind of the same pattern that is in the illustration here. Mainly I want this to be visible not only against the sky but in the grass when it lands. And so I think I've got that as much as I can do. This needs now to finish drying for 48 hours, and then we'll put the decals on. The paint on my rocket is fully dry, and so now we're getting ready to put on the decals. Now these are water slide decals, so you have to get them wet and put them onto the fins. And you'll need to cut these as close as you can. Now don't try and cut each individual feather there, but do come in very close. And once you get it out, go ahead and dry fit it along and make sure that nothing's hanging over. Should. Alright, let's look at the picture here. Okay, so the dark bands go along the leading edge. So this is going to go something like this. Okay. And that's going to take up pretty much the whole fin there. It looks like it'll just fit. Alright, so now we're going to place this in the water for about 20-30 seconds here until it saturates the paper. And you can bring it out every so often and just, that didn't take long at all. Okay, so it's sliding already. So we're just going to then slide this off the paper, bring it right along the edge there. Okay, then we're going to slide the paper out from underneath. Should have inverted my color scheme. That's okay. You can learn from my mistake there. Okay, try and get all the air out of it. Now if you do end up with a little bit hanging over an edge, just wait till the decal dries and you can shave that off if you need to with a hobby knife. It looks like mine's going to just fold over the leading edge, and that'll work fine. Okay, so there's one of them. I have 7 more to go, and I will do those off camera. So here's my feathered flyer with the decals all in place. If you'd like to put a clear coat on over this, I would wait at least 24 hours, maybe even as long as 48 before doing so. And make sure to test like a little corner here with your clear coat to make sure it's compatible with the decals and with the paint that you've got underneath. I hate putting so much work into a little rocket like this because my experience has been about 25% of these never come back. But I hope you had fun building this with me. Have a great flight and a safe recovery, and please stay tuned for more of my videos.